I fucked up on that one. Let's try that again, because I forgot to turn on my microphone, which is kind of important for videos. Let's talk about why it sucks being a Blazers fan, and why Jordan needs to sell the team. I'm kidding, that's what any video as a Blazers fan is going to be talking about, the goddamn Portland Trailblazers. Or should I say Portland Steelblazers. So, this is just an inevitability. Every single video you already know is going to be perfect like example of exactly this, why this is factually correct. Either way, I wanted to specifically talk about the results of last night's game, or more specifically, the Blazers' response to the loss last night to the Thunder, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Just for context, for the future, when this is potentially a few weeks, months, whatever old. This is specifically talking about the game in was it in Oklahoma City? Well, anyway, the game against OKC, the Thunder, last night, which was January the 23rd of 2024. So, when I saw that the Blazers decided to protest and contest the results of that game at the highest level, so protesting, or as it were, contesting it to the NBA immediately after that game, about it being unfair and it should not have been a loss because they fucked up that no call, not calling the timeout that Malcolm Brogdon was supposed to be calling for, and I think Chauncey was calling for it too, and they just ignored it. I was extremely miffed when I saw that last night as a Blazers fan, and I was really fucking irritated by that. I mean, I was upset. Like, I was like, what in the fuck? Like, why? Why in the fuck is it that you'll protest at the highest level? Why is it that you're doing that with? And I understand that like a lot of Blazers fans are going to probably be like, well, why the hell, especially as a fan, would you actually have a problem with that? Like, at least they're finally taking initiative and actually doing something, showing some kind of emotion. And I get that that has not existed on this team since Jody took over. I understand that. But it doesn't matter to me. And the reason why is actually really basic and simple. And it's the fact that though I do agree that, yes, obviously, that was a fuck up. Like, they absolutely guaranteed that OKC would win that game because of that lack of call. Like, they refused to give us a timeout. When Malcolm was yelling for it, other players were yelling for it, and they still wouldn't give it because they said, well, he didn't do the timeout symbol with his hand, so we couldn't call it. Get out of here with your OCD bullshit. That's fucking lies. You don't have to have the sign with the words. If you're clearly a player on a team is calling timeout, that's why they call it calling, because you're using your vocal cords, your larynx, to make noise and form words. Timeout. That's why they call it calling. It's not calling because this makes a little to no sound. That's not calling. That's symbology. There's a difference there. Like, it can help as a visual aid, but if you clearly, as officials doing your job right, you're going to see a player and or coaching staff and players even calling and yelling timeout, and they clearly have possession, you're supposed to fucking call it. You're not supposed to say, well, you didn't complete step 2, which is this. I'm a lefty, so of course I'm going to do that. But, like, really? All of a sudden, now you're going to pull that. Yeah, no, obviously I'm a bit upset about that too, because that was fucking bullshit. Yeah, we should have actually won that game last night, and they 100% handed it on a silver platter to the Thunder. The Thunder should have been a loser last night. They should have gotten a strong little L on their column, despite the fact that they're one player away from a fucking contender, an actual genuine championship contender this season. So, though I agree with that notion that they fucked us out of that game last night, we had that. We 100% would have won that game if it was not for that stupid bullshit. The reason why I don't care and it should not have been protested is because of the fact that that is such a guaranteed inevitability game to game in this sport. In the NBA, that is actually way more common than most of us are ever going to be able to recognize consciously. Like, subconsciously, we might know it, but not necessarily consciously recognize, hey, I see this pattern. But it's a consistent pattern and theme in the sport. And it makes sense because, again, benefit of the devil's advocate for the officials, they are, in those moments specifically, they're going to pay more attention to uh, change of possession. They're going to pay more attention to if a hard foul is committed or some kind of a foul like that, right? Like somebody wraps you up or they, get you on the wrist or whatever. They're going to pay more attention to if you're traveling, if you're shuffling your feet at all. If you double dribble, whatever else, they're going to pay more attention to those details, and they're going to be paying attention to somebody calling for. They're going to be more visually oriented, not verbally, because they're not going to be. That's just how they're trained. That's what, and it makes sense. And human brains are pretty fucking feeble, so naturally they're going to have a hard time paying attention to everything in those moments. So to play devil's advocate, I get that too, and I think that's another reason why that happens so frequently throughout NBA history. You can look; it's a pretty consistent theme. Like this in this kind of a game, that tight, that late, this is pretty consistent. That this happens pretty frequently. So that's one reason why. Or the main reason why. But my biggest reason why is because of the fact that why is it that you think that made more sense to protest to the NBA, the results of this game last night, than it was to protest, I don't know, the results in the final 4.5 minutes of the game in fucking Utah last year, early in the season? It makes no sense. Because in that game, that, without fucking hesitation, should have fucking gotten you a Darko reaction. Darko, the head coach of the fucking Toronto Fappers, the Raptors. It's just a fact. Like, you should have at least had that much of a visceral, intense reaction and been like, what the fuck? Like, at least tell us if they had to win the game tonight. Just tell us so we don't show up, just like you said. It's the perfect encapsulation of that kind of shit and what they pulled in that game. That was textbook rigging 101. That's a masterclass in how to rig a game out of the favor of a team that it went strongly into the favor of. We came back because the full first half of that game, we were playing like we have this whole season. We've been pretty shitty, and we were down by quite a bit. But gradually over the third quarter, and especially in that fourth quarter, we made these big runs, and I got a lot of stops, and all of a sudden we went from tied to, I think, up 7 before they started fucking with everything. They gypped us a couple of points because all of a sudden, a whole fucking minute and multiple possessions later, like, they didn't review either. They just all of a sudden were like, by the way, we were told that was actually a 2, not a 3. So we're going to take away your 3 points. Oh, and that 3 didn't count because blank. Huh? You literally broke the league rules for yourself, let alone for everybody. That's literally, you just ripped to pieces in front of everyone the very rules you're supposed to fucking be enforcing as an official. Hello? What the hell? There was so many things wrong with that final 3.5 to 4.5 minutes of that Utah game. And it was the most rigged shit you'll ever fucking see. It's like they had a fucking earpiece in their ear, and somebody from Secaucus or Adam Silver himself or the executives, somebody said, we can't have this. We cannot have a competitive game, and we cannot allow the Blazers to continue to grow in confidence and run away with this game. We cannot allow them to win. It will not stand, and we certainly cannot allow them to look competent. The Jazz have to win this game, do whatever the fuck it takes, no matter what, invent something on the fly to make sure that this team loses. And by a fair margin. Make sure that happens. Fair meaning there's decent size, right? And I think we lost by like 7 in that game. All because of what happened. It was literally like this. And it just, everything was against us. And everything was in favor of Utah. And we just fucking imploded. That was, for future reference again, for anybody's reference even now, that is in the game that especially Blazers fans are going to know for the back-to-back poster dunks on Walker Kessler late. Because of the fact that he's an elite shot blocker and rim protector, and yet he got baptized twice, pun intended, by the way, by both Tamani Kamara and, of course, Shaedon Sharpe. That was that game. And I guarantee if you watch that game, you will never not hold a grudge about the results of that game and how that went in those final 3.5 to 4.5 minutes. Why in the flying holy mother of fucks is it that last night was the straw that broke the camel's back and you're like, well, this won't do. We have to protest this. But that game in Utah, nothing. Nothing at all. No emotion. Nothing. Not a fucking word was said anywhere about it in that direction. Nothing. No acknowledgement of what everybody who was saying that watched that game, and I mean everybody, even the people who were so normally so quick to just shit on and tear people apart and down and clown on the people who are conspiracy theorists, especially when it comes down to rigging the NBA, right? They love to rag on people who think that the league is rigged and that they're script writers and everything else. It doesn't matter what it is, they're like, you're a fucking idiot, right? We all know those people because there's a load of them out there. It's actually the majority. But even most of those motherfuckers who saw that were like, this was a masterclass in a fucking script session where they're like, whoops, we went off script. Let's get back onto that and let's be dictatorial about it. Make sure we do not deviate ever again. Like their job is or their life is under threat or something. Like because they deviated too far. It's like, no, you have to make sure the results are as we have scripted. Do whatever it takes or you will regret it. Like it was the perfect textbook case where it got everyone, even people who would never dare think something's rigged, were like, that could not have been more textbook of a rig. That was so fucking obvious. Where like everybody was using the earpiece example of like there was one of them was wearing an earpiece and told them this will not fucking do. This is not okay, not acceptable. This will not stand. Fix it. In more ways than one, apparently. And so that's ultimately why it miffed me, and I'm still really irritated at the team for that. Because it's like, there's no comparison between those two results of those two games. Zero. That one was the perfect, and I mean perfect fucking case point and experience and scenario that the protest was built for and implemented as part of the rule book that you can contest the results of a game. That was perfect. Last night was not what it was made for. It is the worst excuse to fucking use as a protest because there's no comparing the two. Like, it's so perfect, that Utah game, that if they had protested that and the league still had the audacity to side with itself and its officials and claim nothing was wrong, nothing was rigged, nothing was out of hand, nothing was botched, it all went exactly as it was supposed to, or maybe they might, just to cover their own asses, say, okay, there was a fuck up here, here, and here, and there was like 2 or 3, but you know, whatever. Like in the review, in fact, of that exact Raptors game, right, where Darko, their head coach, went on that infamous now rant. It was basically like, if we had to lose this game and they had to win, just tell us so we don't show up, which is such a perfect way to put that. You know, that, like, you can't deny that they fucked it up. So, but the point for mentioning that, bringing that back up again, is because in the review, the league does, again, daily reviews after every game. They review the call for every single call and no call and everything throughout the game, and then gives their report afterward about like, okay, what was missed, what was wrong calls, what kind of impact did we feel it had, whatever else, right? And they had the audacity to say, oh, all the calls against the Raptors were perfectly correct, and all these no calls were correct. But they did fuck up on not giving the Raptors even more calls out of their favor. Have fun. Really? Really? Fuck off. And so it's like, it's literally like having a police union investigate itself in some of its own people after they massacre somebody. And they're like, no, you can trust us. We're totally unbiased. So we found nothing wrong. They did everything right. Everything's great. Okay. We clean ourselves and wash our hands of any responsibilities for anything bad that happened. Have fun. It was justified. It's exactly the same level. Of fucking course they're going to side with themselves every time. That's what the NBA does. But it would take the wildest audacity if the Blazers had fucking protested. I so wish they would have protested that game, because it would have been the perfect, most wildly audacious. You'd have to fucking be in a straitjacket level to be that audacious, as the league would have to be, to actually deny it and say, nah, it was correctly officiated. There was little to no impact on the results of this game. Which I can just about guarantee, again, they're going to side with themselves. So of course they're probably going to say that if we protest that game. And if they did, even if, like I said, they gave the little weird little gimmies about like, well, but here and here they missed these calls or something, right? Or there was bad calling here, like they did with that infamous Raptors game. Even if they did that, it would be blaringly obvious. It would be so egregious of them, egregiously audacious to do that. Because if they resulted in that manner and they decided that, and that's what well, they publicized, right? You would have like the world of sports as a whole, not just NBA or basketball fans collectively, but I mean probably all of the sports coming down on the against the NBA for that and being like, you have got to be fucking with us. Like, you cannot. There's literally zero chance, not even a single millionth of a single percent chance, that you could have possibly concluded that and be serious about it. And the fact that you are says you basically just directly admitted, yeah, we rig games. What's it to you? You have a problem? Too bad, you can suffer, as my dad would have said. Like, wham, suffer. Like, that's what that is. Again, that's why I was so miffed about that. Is because, like, there's no comparing these two. Why is this team so fucking incompetently ran? Like, what is wrong with everybody? It's like they've had a botched lobotomy. Everybody who's at the high levels of this fucking team running the teams, so to speak. Whether it's the financial aspect, the fucking branding aspect, the ownership group, the fucking coaching staff, it doesn't matter what it is or who it is, man. It is the most wildly, painfully, egregiously incompetent team we have when it comes down to the business side of it, right? You know, all of the staff. They're so fucking terrible at their jobs. It's insane. And they have been for so long. But it really has been bad since Jody took ownership of the team. That's why this part is so egregiously accurate. That little short I have, and I have like, I think 2 shorts on my channel, and that's it, on this channel. That short I have that is, tell them how you really feel, RipCity. I cannot recommend people watch that enough, because that perfectly encapsulates the inside voice that people try to keep entrapped inside of themselves without letting out the play, about the real feelings of genuine, dedicated Blazers fans like myself, of like, sell the fucking team already. Like, we fucking hate you in everything you are, Jody. Sell it. You fucking are terrible. That and the other person, whatever his fucking name is, Bob or Bill or something like that. Because it's technically 2 people, I guess, apparently. Because I think it's a visor with Vulcan. I can't remember. Either way, it's like this, everything about this team is the perfect encapsulation of everything that can go wrong and is wrong with this team, and what can go wrong and is wrong with a lot of teams. Like, this whole fucking franchise needs to be torn to the very fucking ground. Maybe even tear up the foundation of the team and rebuild it from scratch, because it is in a irreparable position at this point. I really believe that. Everything's got to change. The culture, the mentality, the fucking leadership at every level. All of the staff need to be fucking fired, and you need to fucking get a brand new set of staff in every single level. That literally includes ownership. So literally ownership all the way down. It's terrible. The only thing that actually I would argue should stay is the media team, for obvious reasons. Our media production team is elite. It's one of the best and always has been. I will never not miss Mike and Mike. There will always be the best broadcasters that I think sports as a collective has ever had, in my opinion. I know it's going to be considered a wildly inaccurate hot take, but there's nobody that did it better, in my opinion. A lot of people hated Mike Rice because of the fact that he was too colorful of a commentator, because he's a color commentator, but he's too colorful because he would always just go on these tangents or rambles or these storytelling missions, and you wouldn't really get anything about the actual game and the live action. But I think, again, these are the TV broadcasters. They can get away with that way more than a radio broadcaster can, because obviously you're not watching the game. You can't see what's happening when you're listening on the radio. So understandably, that makes perfect sense that you'd have problems there. But when it's a TV broadcast, you're not supposed to be listening. You're supposed to be watching and listening. So that color, that ultra excess color from Mike Rice, I personally adored. I love the fucking banter and the weird stories that were told and the random Q&A sessions they'd have and all this other shit that had nothing to do with the game at all. I loved it. It was the, oh man, it tickled my fucking likely autistic brain so much. I was like, oh, this is my fucking people. Like this is the right kind of experience to have with sports. In games. But bad or good, being blown to pieces or not, like it was just, it made the experience enjoyable no matter what. Kevin and Lamar are great, but they're just, you can't touch the level that Mike and Mike were. You just can't. It's like nobody will ever be able to get anywhere near what Wheels was for Brian Wheeler for radio broadcasts. It's just, he was so elite. But starting to digress, but the point is that that's the only team that I think should have remained. Even though we no longer have Jeff Curtin, which is still one of the weirdest fucking choices I've ever heard this make, and this team make, and that's saying a lot because holy shit, that's a high bar to clear. And then they fire Jeff Curtin, and it's like, what in the flying fuck did you do that for? It's the weirdest fucking thing. I will never understand it. I think that also, again, is yet another piece of the puzzle proof that this is an incompetently ran team, because there was literally no reason for that at all. Unless maybe, I don't know, he was supposedly was due even more money, like the highest paid he's ever been. Maybe his contract was coming up. I have no idea. Whatever, it's fucking weird. But that's the only team that should not change. Everybody on that team right now is perfect, and I would keep it exactly the way we have it. But everything else, and I mean every other piece of the team in the franchise, has to fucking change and be reset, hard reset from scratch. It's that bad. And I feel like, yeah, this protest against the Thunder game last night is a perfect encapsulation of this being the case universally throughout the whole franchise and team. And it perfectly encapsulates why it sucks to be a fucking Blazers fan. Because nothing they do is competent. Nothing they do is logical or sensible. Oh my god. It's, again, I know it's funny. I think I kind of alluded to this in the beginning of this, but I know that there's a lot of people like, hey, at least Chauncey finally showed some emotion. The funny thing is, his body language and what he did physically did not match his face. And you would have heard him if he was truly yelling, but he wasn't, because you didn't hear him at all. Which proves that his voice and his face defied his body and his physical action, which is in reaction to it, which is super weird, because it's like, did he really get upset about that much? Or was that genuinely kind of what people were alluding to? I don't think they meant in that way, that he was actually basically play acting. He was acting a part to try to motivate, I guess, and fire up the team and show some support for them. And this is ultimately what pretty much everybody's conclusion has been, whether they're Blazers fan or not, is they think it's probably just a way this protest is a way for the team to finally show that they're like, look, we're doing something, okay? We are capable of emotion. Here, let's have some appeasement for you, the fans. Okay, now shut the fuck up and sit down again. You know, like that's basically what the consensus has been. Is that the only reason why they're really doing it is because they're trying to appease us fans, because they know we're fucking pissed. We're beyond done with them and the ownership and everything else. And so there's in the coaching staff and everything else. And so they're just like, okay, fine. We'll finally actually do something. Fine. Here. this is all you get. Now shut the fuck up and sit back down. Like, in other words, we're not going to give you anything else. You're forcing our hand here, so we're going to pretend we care by doing this, but we really don't. And we know it's probably going to be turned down. But that wasn't the point, was to win the protest. The point really was to appease you. Okay, so like I said, shut the fuck up now and sit down. This is all you're getting. And you know, I'm kind of inclined to believe that a bit, because nothing else makes sense. And that actually has at least some semblance of sense and likely reality. So, further encapsulating what I keep reiterating, so I'm not going to say it again. You know already what that means. It's frustrating, man. But that's all for me.